So, Alejandro Garnacho, one of the brightest young players we've produced in years, I think it is fair to say. He was an explosive, fearless, quick, take on your man, get the fans off your seat touchline winger, which belongs at Manchester United. That is Manchester United heritage. But after the Europa League final to Spurs, the question that I think we all keep coming back to is, what are we actually supposed to do with this guy now? Because what he said after the game, it felt like a huge turning point. So let's start with what he actually said, alright? Until the final, I played every round helping the team. Then the final arrives and I play just 20 minutes. I don't know. The final, the season, the whole situation of the club. I will try to enjoy the summer and then we will see what happens. He also said about how the season was crap and how we didn't beat anybody in the league. Now, is he wrong about that? Well, unfortunately, no, he's not. But is he wrong about the rest of the stuff, like being left out of the final? Well, in a way, I kind of agree somewhat with Garnacho's frustration, alright? I do think Amorim's selection for the final against Spurs was wrong, or at least odd. Spurs' midfield has always been so incredibly athletic and physical, and that is our kryptonite. We have always struggled for what feels like so long now with a physical battle. Our players just aren't athletic enough. It's as simple as that. It's why Dugout, I think, looked kind of decent in the final, because he was the only one that could match Spurs' tempo and physicality. Thus, whilst I usually do like Bruno playing a bit deeper, as I think he can dictate the tempo of the game better, Spurs weren't allowing him to do that. Thus, I think it would have been better to start Ugarte in the pivot next to Casemiro, because Casemiro, as good as he is, he can't keep up with that physicality and athleticism either. It's why he's been so bad in the Premier League but so good in Europe against foreign opposition. It's an easier style of play for him to play against. But when you put Ugarte in there next to him, he is the physicality for Casemiro. He is the legs. He is the muscle. It gives Casemiro that freedom to be just a touch more creative, which I think now that he's getting older is what he excels in. So I would have liked to have seen Ugarte start. Another change I probably would have made, and hear me out on this one because I know it's probably quite unpopular, is I would have started Lindelof. Lindelof has genuinely been one of the few players that has kind of impressed me in the last few games. Now, don't get me wrong, the bar is pretty low. I mean, the fact that I'm saying Lindelof should have started in our biggest European final in years says that. That being said, Shaw has just come back from such a long injury, and the games he has played building up to this final since coming back, I don't really think he's been great. I think we've kind of just thrown him into the deep end playing him against Spurs. I would have preferred to see Lindelof playing left centre-back or even right centre-back and put Euro at left centre-back. But does that suddenly mean that Garnacho should have started the final like he said? Well, on one hand, you could argue, yeah. Stick with the players that got you to that final. I think one of the biggest mistakes Spurs made back in the Champions League final against Liverpool is that they didn't start Lucas Moura despite him scoring a hat-trick in the semis to get them there. The difference between Lucas Moura and Alejandro Garnacho, however, is that Alejandro Garnacho did not score a hat-trick in the semis to get us to the final. In fact, he dropped a stinker. So on that hand, you could argue, yeah, I get why Amorim dropped Garnacho. There's also the fact that Garnacho is just generally better coming from the bench. I think it's probably why he actually looked kind of decent when he did come on, because at that point in the game, that's the kind of player we needed coming off the bench, not necessarily starting. Not against such a physical team. I think he probably could have come on 5-10 minutes earlier, sure. But there's definitely an argument to be made as to why he didn't start. However, Mount, who did have a good semi against Bilbao, was abysmal against Chelsea the game before. And unfortunately, that just kind of sums up the entire season. Literally no one has been consistent, except probably Bruno Fernandes, but guess what? Even he was mid as fuck in the final. But something that also makes this worse in Garnacho's case, and probably a reason as to why we have to think about moving him on, is that this isn't the first time something like this has happened, and I think, at least in my opinion, he quite clearly sees himself above the manager. Let's take a look what I mean. Okay, so April last year, Garnacho likes 2 Mark Goldbridge posts that criticised Ten Hag after he was substituted at halftime against Bournemouth. Now, he did apologise to Ten Hag. Ten Hag said that publicly, but that's still not good for a then, I think, 19-year-old to be doing, especially as it wasn't the last time. A few months later in September, Garnacho liked Fabrizio's Instagram post of Cristiano Ronaldo criticising Ten Hag, who at the time was still manager. Then, just 1 month into Amorim's reign, Garnacho likes another post, this time criticising Lisandro Martinez, someone who is quite literally his club and national teammate. And then, of course, there was being left out of the derby against City. I mean, we don't really know the full context behind that, I don't think. Some say it was to do with leaks, some say it was to do with attitude, some say it was to do with partying. I don't know. But what is clear is that there is a big discipline problem, which brings us onto what he said after Spurs. Now, unfortunately, he's not alone in this. It clearly runs in the family because his brother can't help but run his mouth. He actually, after the final, went to Instagram to say that his brother was thrown under the bus. And so, unfortunately, as talented as he is, that talent is matched by an attitude and ego that exceeds that talent, it would seem. And that is a problem. But again, let's bring it back to the final, because this isn't just about Garnacho, to be fair. Like I said, I think Amorim could have made changes for that final, but let's be real, you could have made them, but there was still no guarantee you would have won that. The squad, quite simply, isn't good enough. I mean, you can run your eyes, do this at home right now. Start from the bottom of the table with Southampton and work your way up the table. And I can guarantee, because I've done this myself, there is at least 1 or 2 players in every single team, starting from even at Southampton with Dibberling, who would probably get 20 games for us. There's at least 1 or 2 players that would start for us. And so, yes, unfortunately, I'm not surprised we lost. But at least with Garnacho, there is still some stock left in him. And for that reason, I think it probably is the best time for us to move him on. I think it's probably in both parties' best interest, in fact, that Garnacho leaves the club. Because we desperately need the money now more than ever after losing the final, and he will be pure profit. He clearly doesn't like Amorim. I don't think he really suits Amorim's system as one of the number 10s. Like I said, he is a quintessential touchline winger, and he clearly has no interest or no skill in being a wing back. And so that's not going to work out. We've seen that Chelsea and probably Napoli are still interested, and so we should probably take advantage of that. And that's crazy to say, because just last year he was probably one of our only bright sparks in what was also a really bad season. I mean, it looks good in hindsight now compared to this, but still it was pretty shit. And so back just last summer, and even for some people, admittedly me, in January, Garnacho was viewed to be as untouchable as the likes of Kobbie Mainoo. And yet, fast forward to now in May, and I'm saying cash in, please, whilst you still can. Now, if we do sell him for, I don't know, 50 million, and he goes to Napoli and completely balls it out like McTominay's doing, does that mean it was a mistake to sell him? Absolutely not, because we've already all but signed Matheus Cunha, who I think is just an upgrade in every sense of the imagination in that number 10 position. Do I think Garnacho could go on and be a better player than Cunha? Sure. In a system that suits him under a manager that he gets along with, why not? But I don't think that's going to happen here anymore. And so I want to ask you guys, sell Garnacho, keep him, loan him, what are we doing? Is he right? Is he wrong? Let me know below. Also subscribe, ding that notification bell, and follow me on Twitter if you're interested. Peace.